Hey everybody, welcome to video 14. Today we're going to be focusing on the bones of your appendicular skeleton. We have a lot to get through, so we're going to hustle and go ahead and get started on your shoulder girdle. The shoulder girdle is going to be the three bones that make up your shoulder joint. That's going to be the humerus, the clavicle, and then the scapula. So starting off with the clavicle, we have this little S-shaped bone here. It's actually the only long bone in the human body that sits in the horizontal plane of the body. We can tell which side is medial and which side is lateral. The long, wide, thin portion is going to be lateral, while the more square portion is going to sit medial. And so it's going to sit right here. The medial portion is going to be attached to your sternum, while the lateral portion is going to articulate with your scapula. And that clavicle is going to provide some lateral support for your scapula. So I don't know how well you can see here. But the clavicle's job is to kind of pull a lot of the shock that's coming through your arm towards your axial skeleton, which is better equipped to be able to handle the stress and the impact that you might get from that. Because the clavicle, it has a really strong ligament attached at that sternoclavicular joint, sternum-clavicle joint, and because of the S-shaped curve of this clavicle, the clavicle is the most frequently broken bone in the human body because this joint does not want to dislocate, and as pressure is traveling through this clavicle, a lot of that impact is either going to gather at the valley or at the peak of that clavicle, and it's going to lead to a fracture. Somebody that has fractured their clavicle, you see this commonly at like football games, football practices, because they lose that lateral support for their scapula. Somebody that has broken their clavicle, their shoulder is going to droop several inches lower, just because that clavicle can no longer sit in the horizontal plane. As they run off over to the side, that shoulder is going to be hanging really, really low. The scapula, your shoulder blade here, known because it's got that very wide, flat, thin portion there, as well as the spine that runs along the backside here, has an oval fossa right there, and that is where the head of your humerus, your arm bone, upper arm bone, is going to articulate, and that's going to give you your glenohumeral joint, what you traditionally think of as your true shoulder joint. Even though the shoulder girdle does include a lot of support from that clavicle, the glenohumeral joint is the big one. So you're going to have a lot of rotator cuff muscles wrapping around everything in here to give it some support. But I believe the shoulder is has the widest range of motion out of all of your limbs. Moving on, taking a look at your whole arm. We already talked about the clavicle and the scapula. The humerus, we talked about where it sits, the head of the humerus in your shoulder joint. Distally, it's going to have all sorts of things sitting down here. We won't get into what those are. These are going to be part of your elbow joint. Your elbow joint is going to have two bones. You're going to have the ulna and the radius. So I'll start with the ulna. Ulna, fairly long, thin bone, but it's easily identified because ulna starts with U, and the ulna, see if I can orient it here, has a really, really nice U shape where it articulates at the proximal end for your elbow. So it sits really, really nicely into your elbow joint there, and it's going to hinge back and forth, and that's going to give you the flexion and extension of your elbow. The ulna, you can also tell on a human, it's also always going to sit on the pinky side of the joint. So the way I always remember that, the pinky starts with a P, ulna starts with a U, so P-U. I guess for high schoolers, that one always seems to work. And then we have the radius. The radius, another fairly long, thin bone. You can think the radius is half the diameter of a circle. For my math whizzes out there, the radius also has a really, really nice round fossa that is going to sit at the proximal end. So that ulna is going to articulate with your elbow, and its job is actually to pivot back and forth depending on whether your hand is palm up or palm down, or if you're in anatomical position, depending on if you are in palms facing forward, like you would be in anatomical position, or palms facing backwards. Because what happens, the radius has to stay on the thumb side. Because remember, ulna is pinky side. Radius at the elbow has to stay on the thumb side, but it stays always in this position on the elbow. So if you were to rotate your hand over, the distal end of the radius has to stay with the thumb, but it stays locked in position up here at the elbow. So as a result, if your hand is not in anatomical position, the radius and ulna will form an X. Other bones of your arm, you have the hand here. So I have a left hand here. You have the carpals. We'll take a look at some of the carpals individually here in a second. These are going to be the bones of your wrist. It's misspelled on this. I don't know why, but the metacarpals come next. They're going to be distal from the carpals, and they're going to be what form the bones of your palm. And then you're going to end with the phalanges, the bones of your fingers. You have 2 in your thumb and then 3 in the other 4 digits. Looking specifically at your carpals, there are 8 bones that make up the carpals. Really all you need to know about them is that they are called the carpals. But for those of you that are interested, if you have your hand in anatomical position, actually just think that arm's out and then you just bring that hand to your face. You can kind of imagine it. You start proximolateral, which means the most proximal set of bones, and then the most starting lateral from there. So I have this here, proximal closest to the point of attachment, lateral in anatomical position is thumb side, and then we have a mnemonic to remember these bones. So it's so long to pinky, here comes the thumb. And those 8 bones, the first letters of that mnemonic correspond to each of the first letters of the 8 bones of your carpals. The scaphoid, lunate, triquetrum, pisiform, hamate, capitate, trapezoid, and then the trapezium bones. And so you can kind of follow those along here. So long to pinky, here comes the thumb. Moving on to your pelvic girdle. The pelvic girdle is different than your shoulder girdle in that you do not want much movement or any movement really at all in your pelvic girdle. Instead, what you want the pelvic girdle to be able to do is transfer force from torso to legs or from legs to torso. Your hip bones. So I have 2 hip bones here. They are actually, each of them is made of 3 bones that fuse together during puberty. Normally they're going to sit something like this. They will pivot forward in the body. But the first bone that you have is the ilium. That's going to be this wide, flat fan that you have of a bone here. And it does include the iliac crest. So kind of a not sharp, but decent ridge running along the top here. You can actually palpate your iliac crest when you feel your sides and you feel your hip. The ischium is going to sit posterolateral, so back and lateral of your hip bones here. And the ischium also includes the ischial tuberosity on the back side here. If you sit on somebody's lap, you're sitting on granddad's lap, and they say you have a bony butt, what they're saying is that they can feel your ischial tuberosity. So try that one next time. Then you have the pubis bone, which is going to sit anteromedial, and that's going to be where you have the pubic symphysis. I don't have the cartilage here with me, but that pubic symphysis would sit in between these hip bones. It makes for a very slightly mobile cartilaginous joint in between. Here's a picture here. Again, we already talked about the ilium, being that wide, flat pan there. The ischium sitting posterolateral, so back and outside or away from the midline. Pubis, my arrow doesn't quite reach the pink for some reason, but the pink region is the pubis bone, where it would be pre-puberty. We already talked about the iliac crest. You can palpate that. And then the pubic symphysis here being the cartilage in the middle. Moving on to your leg bones, we'll start with the femur. The femur is the largest and strongest bone in your body. Most people are pretty familiar with it. You have the head of the femur going into your hip socket, and then at the opposite end is going to be where your knee joint is. at that knee joint, that femur is going to articulate with the tibia. So you'll have things like your meniscus and your ACL and your MCL and your PCL and your LCL and everything running through this knee joint here. So there will actually be some space between these two, but that is where your knee joint sits, where the femur is going to meet the tibia. The fibula is also going to run down your lower leg. It's going to sit in the lateral portion of your lower leg, but really it's just going to be some extra support. You can see it's as tall as the tibia, extra support in your lower leg. Getting to your tarsals here, the tarsals are going to be your ankle bone, just like we had the carpals. In the wrist, you also have tarsals, very similar sounding name, that are going to make up your ankle bone. They sit down in here, and I'll be sure to pass these around in class so you're able to see these as well. Metatarsals, just like you had the metacarpals in your hand, you also have the metatarsals running along your foot. So if you palpate the superior portion of your foot, you're palpating the metatarsals. One that I skipped is the patella. The patella is the only sesamoid bone common to all humans. Remember, sesamoid bones form in tendons to provide extra support and kind of handle some of the stress that those tendons go to. So you can see this patella here, very, very small sesamoid bone. In sesamoid bone terms, it's actually massive, but compared to most of our other bones, it is fairly small. Not in the picture here, the rest of the bones end up getting named, is your calcaneus. Remember, the calcaneal region is your heel bone. So if I have a foot here, this is how it would normally sit. Calcaneus is this large bone hanging out the back. That is your heel bone. So that is a very quick rundown of the bones of the appendages of your appendicular skeleton. Again, I'll be sure to pass around these bones so that we're able to kind of see them and see what they look like in plastic version, but at least in real life size. We'll make sure that everybody is able to be familiar with these bones. Don't forget, there is a video quiz over this, so make sure you take the time to go. It only takes a few minutes to go answer those quizzes, or to go answer that quiz.